As an adult, I don't really believe in ghosts. As a younger person, I had a couple of experiences that were kind of tough to find a good explanation for. This was one, if not the first, of a few events that I consider to be major events. My childhood home, and where my mother still resides today, was the setting for a couple of these events. It is a house that she and my father built when I was around 3 or 4 years old, prior to their divorce 3 or 4 years later. It's a one-story, three-bedroom brick house with a basement. The basement has a garage door that opens up on one side of the house, a single door and a couple of windows on the rear of the house, and the rest is enclosed by a sloped earth berm. The basement is not a finished or heated space, and it has served numerous purposes throughout the years. It's been a small workshop for lawn machinery and motorcycles, a playroom area complete with a pool table, and, more than anything else, a storage area for miscellaneous junk accrued through the years. It has a longer, around 12-foot high wooden staircase that has never been finished or enclosed that opens up into the home's main hallway. When I was around 12 years old, I was home alone one afternoon after getting off the school bus. It was a typical spring day with nothing out of the ordinary going on. I was eating a snack and watching TV when I thought I heard a noise in the house. I muted the television, got up, and walked around, checking the entire house. I didn't find anything abnormal, nor did I hear any strange sounds. I sat back down and unmuted the television. After a few minutes passed, I thought I heard something again. Again, I repeated the process of muting the TV and walking around the house to check things. Again, there was nothing obvious. I once again resumed my activities, and once again, after a few moments, I heard something. This time, it sounded initially like the sound was coming from the hallway or the basement. I walked to the door that leads to the basement and stood there for a moment, listening. To my surprise and absolute terror, I heard the distinct and loud sound of 2 feet stomping up the wooden staircase toward the door. Reflexively, I hit the door with an open palm and shouted, "Hey!" I made sure both the knob lock and the chain lock on the door were fastened, and I darted out the front of the house. I took off up a dirt path, bound for my grandfather's house a couple 100 yards away. I found him quickly and informed him of what was going on. I was completely sure that there was someone in the basement and that he had to go back with me to search the house. We went back immediately and couldn't have been away more than 7 or 8 minutes of total time. We started upstairs and found nothing out of the ordinary. We opened the basement door and ventured down. There was absolutely nothing there. The doors were locked. The windows were locked and still had the screens in them. There weren't any loose pipes or anything that could make a hammering sound similar to the distinct sound of someone bounding up those wooden steps. I was uneasy the rest of the evening, and I never thought about that basement the same way after that. I don't know what it was that made the sound, but it wasn't anything natural for a living, breathing creature. This happened a few years ago when I was around the age of 18. My group of friends and I were staying at this friend's late grandparents' house in a ghost town in the mountains of Italy. The house is built on 2 floors, with a small courtyard on the front, and stairs connecting the 2 floors on the outside of the house, accessible from the courtyard. When this happened, we were chilling out in the courtyard. Some other people and I were facing the entrance of the house, and we were able to see inside of the 2nd floor, specifically the one central corridor with the door to the different rooms. 2 people got inside the house and went to the bathroom, which is at the end of the corridor, on the right. A few minutes later, they got out and called out for us, asking if somebody had opened the trap door leading to the attic, which is located at the very end of the corridor, right outside the bathroom. That's where things got weird. There was no way for someone to open the trap door. as you would have needed a ladder to get up there, since the ceilings are quite high, and the only ladder could be found at the ground floor, locked behind the front doors. Also, all of us who were facing the front of the house and looking directly to the inside should have noticed if someone or something was moving. And similarly, the two people in the bathroom should have noticed something too, as the bathroom has one of those opaque glass doors. As soon as we all realized that there was no way somebody in the group could have done that, we all got inside the house, but nobody had the courage to really go up into the attic. So we just closed the door and tried to go on with the day. But everybody kept feeling quite uneasy the entire time, seeing weird shadows or hearing steps coming from the attic. I reckon that could have easily been because of the suggestion, but still. I don't know how we managed to do that, but eventually we all went to sleep. And the morning after, some friends finally decided to go up and check the attic. The room was completely bare. The only thing they found up there was a hammer, standing on its head in the middle of the room. It's fair to say that only creeped us out all the more, and it really didn't make us want to look into whatever had happened. So again, they just got out of the attic and closed the door. We were all very glad to go back to the city later that day. When I was 17, my brother, mom, grandma, and I lived in a centennial house. With it being over 100 years old, I figured that there had to be a ghost or two. A lot of strange occurrences happened, and I always felt like I was being watched, especially in the basement. It was a basement with 4 different rooms. One door opened into a storage room to the left, and a sump pump room. My brother's room right across the hallway, and the other room next to his was the laundry room. One summer day we had just gotten home from a camping trip. I was thirsty and a bit hungry, so I went into the kitchen to make me something to eat. Note that my kitchen has sliding glass doors to the outside, and just right to it another door leading to the basement. I was standing at the counter when I heard my brother call my name and ask if I wanted a smoke. I'm like, "Yeah, where are you?" The sound came very clearly from the basement, but since there's a deck outside my glass door, I figured he could have been outside. I had dark curtains, and they weren't drawn. I walk up the basement door and yell down again asking if he's down there. No answer. I'm like, okay, fine. He'll come find me if he wants to smoke. So I walked to the front of the house, through my grandma's living room and into the other living room, and out to the front door to our van to grab my backpack and purse. As I go outside, my brother and his girlfriend at the time were unloading the van. I asked if they had called my name, and he was very confused. I told him what I had just heard, and the very short conversation we had just had. He and his girlfriend both assured me that they had been outside unloading our camping stuff in the garage and hadn't been anywhere near me. It sent chills down my spine. I limited my time going downstairs from then on. I still don't know what it was. This happened to me about a year ago. I often slept at my father's house alongside my sister. When we slept over, specifically if we were upstairs, we would hear someone or something running in the attic. At first it didn't scare us, and we continued to remain unfazed. We thought it must be pigeons or rats. But when we told our dad, he went to check the attic to see if it was animals. But there was nothing. And even if there could have been, there was literally no space for them to run. We have a very small attic. You can't even stand upright. Alongside some wooden panels blocking a straight path, there are boxes everywhere. Clutter is covering the whole floor, and there's no gap in between. It would have been completely impossible for them to run from one side to the other with such loud footsteps. So we still don't know what's up in that attic, and frankly, I'm not sure we want to find out. As I mentioned in the last story, my boyfriend and I live in the basement of his grandparents' house. One night, my boyfriend went upstairs to make us some food. I was sitting on the bed playing around on my phone downstairs by myself. I didn't hear him come back downstairs, but I saw something walk across the foot of the bed into the bathroom. Me, thinking that it was him, started talking to him. I'm the kind of girl that can tend to ramble, and he's not much of a talker, so I just kept on jabbering along, thinking he was in there. But then I actually heard him come down the stairs, and he flung the door open. I was really freaked out because I had legitimately seen somebody walk across the room. But what really freaked me out was what happened 2 days later. I was sitting on the bed while my boyfriend was at work, talking to one of my friends on the Snapchat video thing. I looked up and I saw a smoky black silhouette of a person walk across the room and into the bathroom. What made this so much scarier than the last time was that 1, it happened in broad daylight, and 2, it was completely in front of me, not just out of the corner of my eye like a couple of days before. When I told my boyfriend about this, he laughed at me and said, "Yeah, I hear footsteps run down the stairs, stop at the door, and then run back up." This scared me and weirded me out because he didn't even seem afraid of it. I would have been terrified. I think this was the first time that I ever really saw a ghost or whatever that basement entity was. I think the scariest thing is that I don't know what it is. A lot of people have seen actual things in this house, and I'm scared I'm going to see a full ghost one day, or whatever this thing is. Some friends and I ventured into an old abandoned hospital that's pretty securely boarded up. We climbed through a broken window that was maybe 8 inches at most. It was nighttime, and most of the large hospital campus is abandoned with welded doors and boarded windows. And though people had obviously gotten in before us, there was much less graffiti and damage than we're used to seeing in these places. The campus has several buildings, and we were clueless as to which one we were in, until we found a morgue in the basement, and medical equipment strewn about. We didn't hear anything or see anything out of the ordinary, except for the light in the attic. The building had no power, yet we could see from the top floor that a light was on above us. We couldn't get into the attic, as the only staircase up there had a chained and bolted door. It was a little odd, but I'm not sure if it was paranormal. Maybe there was a solar-powered light? Would the bulb ever go out? I don't know. It didn't scare us off. We did continue wandering around for a while, but nothing crazy happened. Still, sometimes I think about that light in the attic, and I try to figure out what could have caused it, but I still haven't come up with a sufficient explanation. I've been dating my boyfriend for about 3 years now. We live with his grandparents. Now, his grandma is really into paranormal and supernatural things. And I remember that she told me when my boyfriend and I first started dating that she saw her dead aunt in the bathroom. When she told me this, I'm not too sure if I believed her because I can be skeptical about paranormal things at times. Fast forward, and my boyfriend and I are staying in her finished basement. One night, I was up pretty late, playing around and doing my makeup in the bathroom while my boyfriend was asleep. I saw something that looked like smoke fill the air, and I had this extremely uneasy feeling come over me. I felt the need to get out of that bathroom immediately, so I did. I ran out of the bathroom and flung myself onto the bed next to my boyfriend. Right when I laid down, I felt little pieces of my hair start to move. We sleep with a fan on high speed, and I like to sleep with my blanket over my head, so naturally I thought it was the fan blowing my hair. I tucked it back under the blanket. This happened seconds later, and it weirded me out. I eventually began to fall asleep when I woke back up. This was around 4 a.m. I felt pressure against my legs, as if someone was sitting down on the bed next to me, and I could feel the blanket moving on the back of my legs. Obviously, I freaked out and sat up, but I saw absolutely nothing. I ended up getting myself to fall back asleep. But when my boyfriend got up for work at about 6 a.m., the basement door that leads to the woods in his backyard was wide open. This is the weirdest house I've ever lived in, and that was my first experience there, but there ended up being a lot more where that came from. I have an attic in my house, and ever since I was young, I hated going up there. It was dark, as there was no light up there, and it was always absolutely freezing. It had a really bad energy, and my anxiety would skyrocket whenever I had to go up there with my dad. It felt like someone had set a timer, and time was running out, if that makes sense. Like I had to get out of there as soon as possible, or something really bad would happen. In 2016, my parents decided to convert the attic and make it their bedroom. After this happened, I noticed a lot of unexplainable things going on. The first, one day I was off school and I was home alone. I was lying on my bed watching the Jeremy Kyle show with both of my cats on the bed with me. Then I heard what sounded like somebody walking down the stairs from the attic. It's a very distinct sound, and I knew what it was. I paused the video and listened. I didn't hear anything, so I continued watching, now a little on edge. 2 minutes later, I heard the footsteps again. My cat's ears perked up, and both of them were staring at my door. Peanut, my cat, started hissing and meowing, and went to the end of my bed to hide. At this point, I was tearing up. I somehow managed to get out of bed and pull my drawers in front of the door. I sat in front of the door and called my dad, sobbing. I explained to him what was happening, and he said to get out of my room and look. Hell no. I begged him to call my neighbors to come in and get me. It was only after I called my dad 5 times, he kept hanging up on me, that he finally called my neighbors. When my neighbors came in, they have a key. I flew down the stairs sobbing and shaking. My neighbor checked the entire house, but nobody was there. I didn't feel safe staying home for weeks after this. The second, my best friend and I would hang out after school at my house most days, and whenever we did, we would always hear noises from upstairs. One time, in particular, we were in the kitchen making noodles, and we heard banging upstairs. I assumed it was my cat and didn't think anything of it. My friend then shushed me and told me to listen. From upstairs, I could hear the sound of someone opening and closing a chest of drawers, and slamming my wardrobe doors. Now, my cats are loud and clever, but how does a cat open a drawer? It's a very distinct sound. So we ended up waiting in my back garden, holding a paint scraper and a knife until my dad came home. The third. This is by far one of the scariest stories. My dad, my sister, and I were all home. My dad called up the stairs to me and said he was going to the shops. Once he left, I went downstairs to grab some food. I asked my sister if she wanted anything to eat, and she said yes. She was in the front room, so I was talking to her from the kitchen. My dad knocked on the door and I yelled at her to get it. She didn't. I went to get the door, telling her off for being lazy. When I opened the door, in came my dad and my sister. After months of noises, banging, hearing people talking, and walking around when I was home alone, I was sick of it. I felt anxious to be in my own home, and I had other things to worry about. So one day, I decided to try to talk to whatever it was that was in that house. I didn't use a Ouija board or anything like that. I just sat on my stairs and had a chat, I guess. I told them that I respected that they were in this house before, but that they were scaring me and stressing me out. I asked if they would be able to leave. or at the very least, to stop scaring me. After this, I've never had anything happen in my house. No banging, no noises, nothing. Although my experience starts off like every haunting movie, I promise that this is exactly how it went down. My best friend flips houses and found this huge Victorian mansion that went into foreclosure. It was up for auction, and he was the only bidder. He paid next to nothing for this house. His plan was to demolish and update as much as he could on his own. I was there almost every day to help in any way that I could. It got me out of my house, kept my mind off things, and taught me a thing or two about renovating a house. It was a win-win for both of us. Beside the whole place having a cold, abandoned feeling, the only place that my stomach turned was in a specific room in the basement. I felt like I could pinpoint the exact corner where the bad vibes were coming from, and I voiced this to my friend and his girlfriend many times. I could barely step foot in this room. It felt like an invisible barrier was in front of me. Once I went into the room, I felt sick, bothered, and sad. This has never happened to me before. One night we were out on the front porch when a neighbor came over and started talking to us about the history of the house. He said that it was one of the first ones built in the town and was once a part of the Underground Railroad. At one time it was a firehouse, and later it was used as a funeral home. We thought it was pretty cool and went to Google to find out more. Unfortunately, all of the history stuff like that was only at the library, so our search stopped there. One day I arrived at the house before my friend did. He told me to go inside and start getting things ready. Side note, at this point the only working bathroom was in the basement, and I was the only one in the house. I started getting things ready on the main floor, but kept catching glimpses of things out of the corner of my eye. It happened enough times to thoroughly freak me out. Some time passed, and my friend still wasn't there, when my urge to pee became too great to ignore. I only had one inside option, in the bathroom, in the basement, next to the creepy room. I was about 25 at the time, but still, I was so afraid to go into that basement that I peed outside in broad daylight where numerous neighbors could have seen. I'm also a girl, so it was pretty clear what I was doing. That's how scared I was. After my friend's girlfriend had some creepy vibes, she decided to find a medium to come stay the night and do a full-blown Ghost Adventures lockdown. I'm super into creepy stuff, so I was excited to be a part of it and hear if they found anything interesting. They did not want to know anything about the house or any of the experiences that we had had before they did their investigation. The next day after the lockdown, we sat down with the medium and her team to discuss their findings. I kid you not that the medium says they found the spirit of a slave that had not crossed over. He was in the basement of the house when it was part of the Underground Railroad. The medium noted that he was afraid of people and saw him cowering in this one corner. It was the same room and the exact corner that had made me feel so uneasy and sick to my stomach. I visibly turned white and every hair on my body was sticking up. The medium noticed my reaction and I told her about the weird vibes and the stories that the neighbor told us. She told me that she could tell I was sensitive and in tune to other energies around us that other people can't see and feel. When I was younger, about 9, my parents and all of my siblings went on vacation to Germany, while me, my sister who is 3 years older than me, and my brother, who was in high school at the time, stayed home. We had our next door neighbors babysitting us. I live out in the country on 18 acres, so nobody is very close to us besides them. Anyway, My house has always been a little bit creepy in certain parts, but it comes and goes. The night before everything happened, my neighbor Fred fixed all of the locks in the house, specifically this one door by my parents' bedroom that we never use. I think I've probably used that door a total of 10 times, and I've lived here for 11 years. Their bedroom is on the first floor, and everybody else's is on the second. So he fixed all the locks and then latched them all shut. We only ever used the side door by the garage and the front door. So the next day we all went to school, and my sister and I went to our singing and dancing group after that. Rachel, who was watching us, drove us. Fred worked, and we picked him up on our way home, so just my brother was home. His room is right next to the attic. So we all get home from being gone all day, and my brother is freaking out. He said that while he was sleeping, the attic door, so to speak, fell onto the floor by his room. To get to the attic, you have to stand on a ladder, and you have to push the door up because it rests on a border on the wall. You have to slide the door up to sit on the floor of the attic, and this door fell down onto the floor, which is wild because to do that, it would have had to have been turned sideways, and nobody was home. We all get home, and every single door in that house is wide open. There are 5 different doors on the first floor, so everybody's freaking out, wondering what happened, and we go upstairs and see the door sitting on the floor. Everybody goes into my parents' room, and I'm walking from the kitchen to their room. I hear my name being called very quietly from upstairs. I walked into the room, and everybody else was in the room too. Nobody was upstairs. Nobody could have been calling me. It could have been an intruder or somebody trying to steal, but nothing was missing. And that hasn't been the only scary thing that's happened in my house. Either way, it gave us all quite the fright. This happened in 2005 to 2006. I was 16 to 17 and living at home in my parents' basement. I had just started dating a girl a little younger than me that claimed she had the ability to communicate with spirits. I was pretty skeptical of her abilities, but being a teenage boy, I didn't really think too much of it as I was attracted to her and that was all that mattered. I had just gotten home from a soccer game I had early that morning, and I walked downstairs and everything was pulled up from under our staircase in our laundry room. I asked my dad why everything was out, and he told me that instead of using the litter box, the cats had been going under the stairs, so he had to get under there and clean it all up. I helped him a little bit and then went to my room to shower as my girlfriend was coming over. So I hop in the shower, and about 10 minutes into the shower, I start hearing a very loud, aggressive banging on the door. It made me jump, but of course, I just thought my dad needed something from me. So I shouted, "1 second, Dad, I'm just in the shower." Not even 2 seconds go by, and I hear more frantic banging. I'm a little annoyed at this point, and I just go, "Dude, I'm in the shower, 1 second." A couple more seconds go by, and more banging persists. Finally, I'm getting pretty mad, so I reach out of my shower to grab a towel, storm over to the door, and angrily open it. I shout down, "Okay, what do you want? I'm taking a shower." And of course, nobody was there. I'm a little weirded out at this point. I had chills run down my spine. The basement always creeped me out. So I poke my head out and look to the other side of the basement, thinking maybe he was storming off or something, and there it is. A black figure standing there, as if I had caught him off guard. No eyes, no mouth, just a figure standing there looking at me. We stared at each other for a second or two, and then he moved across the hallway toward the laundry room. I slammed the door shut and started hyperventilating. What was I going to do? I had to pass the laundry room to get upstairs. I quickly got dressed and gingerly opened my door and looked to the other side of the basement. Nothing. No sign of the figure. I tiptoed up toward the other side of the basement until I could see the stairs, and I ran up them. The first thing I did was call out for my dad. My mom heard me and answered, "He's in the garage." I ran out to the garage and said kind of awkwardly, "Hey, Dad? Were you banging on my bedroom door like 5 minutes ago?" My dad turned and looked at me kind of confused and said, "No, why?" I didn't know what to say. I think I was in shock. I realized that whatever that thing was physically hit my door. If it could do that, what else was it capable of? So I'm sitting there in the garage with this blank look on my face, and I hear the dogs start barking inside. At this point, I realized that my girlfriend must have pulled in the front of the house. So I run to the house and meet her at the front door and try to play it off like everything is normal. She walks in and has a worried look on her face. She goes, "What did you do?" I was like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You've changed something about the house. Whatever you've changed, you need to change it back. Now." I explained to her that the cats made a mess under the stairs, so my dad had to pull everything out to clean it. She told me to put everything back the way it was, and we did. For the 5 or 6 more years that I lived in that basement, I never had a problem. I didn't see anything. But every time I walked past that laundry room, I got goosebumps. There's this little access to the attic in the place that we currently live in. We never really noticed it, up until our roommate pointed it out, trying to mess with us and scare us. So my best girlfriend and I were doing laundry one day in the garage. This thing is located in the garage above the door. I was staring up at it as she was sorting laundry. It moved open slightly, and I told her about it. Then it moved closed, and I told her again. She looked at it and we laughed, kind of creeped out. You know, a nervous kind of laugh. We tried to go about our day, but then we got paranoid. So we went inside and we were talking about it, trying to figure out what it might be. I kind of creeped her out by talking about all those videos. You know, the ones you see online of people finding out that other people were living in their attics. Well, we turned the air off and waited for it to shut down. We stood in the garage looking at this thing for like 5 solid minutes. We were going to go inside because nothing was happening. I looked at my girlfriend and said, "Let's go. Nothing's gonna happen here." When I said that, the door flung open. Fast. We ran inside screaming. The boys swear that it's from opening and closing the garage door. But we weren't doing that when this happened, so we're still weirded out. I really still want to get it checked out. Because even if it isn't paranormal, that could mean that there's somebody living up there. And if there's nobody living up there, well then, something's going on. Either way, I want to know. When I was in middle school, 7th grade to be exact, we lived in this house that had a basement that would not stay locked, even with a bolt lock. Every night, we would lock that basement door, and every morning we would wake up to find it standing wide open. The basement was a dirt basement, so my mom had in the back of her head that somebody was probably murdered in the house and then buried in the basement. But if that were true, none of us were going to go down there and find out. After all, my mother was a single mother of 2 young boys. In the room where the basement door was, you would often hear muffled voices, people having conversations, but they were always muffled, like they were far away or whispering. However, you could distinctly make out a male voice and a female voice. My mother was a nurse who worked night shifts at the local hospital. So, on the weekends, I would always have a friend spend the night. On a Saturday night, while myself, my brother, and my friend were sitting in the living room playing Sega, yes, this was ages ago, we heard a woman scream coming from the room with the basement. My mother would go to work at about 3 a.m. and work until about noon the following day, sometimes later. So when we heard the woman scream, it was about 4:30 a.m. on a weekend night, with just us boys alone in the house. After the scream, we quickly turned off the television and Sega and ran for my mother's room, where we all decided to sleep on her queen-sized bed while she was at work. The next morning, about 9 a.m., a few hours before my mother got home from work, my friend said that my mom came home last night, even though she was supposed to be at work. According to him, he woke up and saw a woman standing at my mother's bedroom door. After he saw her standing there, she told him, "Go back to bed. Everything's okay." About 10 years later, during our family Christmas, we were all talking about the same house with the creepy basement and its basement dwellers. Finally, after all those years, my mother revealed to my brother and I that she woke up several times to see someone standing at the doorway of her bedroom. She said she didn't want to tell us because it would scare us. However, according to my mother, she saw several times a woman standing at her bedroom door. It gives me goosebumps to this day. I've been hearing knocks coming from the attic and from the walls for a while now. Recently, they've been happening coincidentally right under me. I'll move to one area, and it will happen there. And then, on a separate occasion, I'll be in an entirely different room, and still, it will knock above me or below me. I've had a history of sleep deprivation, anxiety, and depression. I've heard my name whispered in my ear, and something whisper, "Help me." Sounded like some kind of zombie. Recently, I've been having terrifying hallucinations. As I'm about to cross into the first stage of sleep, I always feel or hear something that wakes me up immediately. Back and forth from being awake to the entering of the first stage of sleep. I feel something tug at my pillow and the mattress moving as if somebody's trying to lift it. Eventually, I figured all of this was a hallucination for multiple reasons. I've recorded when I felt something push the pillow behind me and there's nothing there. On other occasions, I have felt tremors caused by my body and shaking that felt exactly like what I thought something else was causing. But the noises and seeing things move on their own has been happening for a while now, way before my hallucinations. And those happened out of nowhere. I usually only have motion hallucinations rather than seeing or hearing things. The knocking is really freaking me out. Could it be possible that I'm hallucinating all of this? Or is it actually real? Either way, it doesn't matter. I've told my parents about the experiences I've had, but they keep denying that it's real. I'm tired of living in fear. If anybody has any idea how to ignore it or get rid of it, I'd love to know. The basement door at my house never shuts unless you push it closed. It opens up if you don't close it all the way. And sometimes I've had dreams of a person that had a blue aura or something around it, and an old military uniform coming up the stairs and opening the door. The same with my cousin. Independently, she saw the same thing. A few days ago, I came up out of the basement, and as I was about to close the door, it slammed shut, all on its own. I freaked out, And then I heard noises from down there, like somebody was walking on the stairs. I didn't check because every time I got close to the door, there was a weird noise, kind of like somebody clearing their throat. It freaked me out.